Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talk Your Abs Off. I'm your host, Abby Clapper, and today we have such a fun episode. Today I am joined by Marv, goes by Uncle Marv, and he has such a fun podcast that I think he has a lot of insights that are really going to help us out here in this space with what we like to talk about. So, hello, Marv. Welcome to Talk Your Abs Off.
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So Marv and I actually met, we met a few months ago, virtually, and then we met in person about a month ago. I haven't talked too much about this, but I went to a podcast convention in Orlando and had the opportunity to meet Marv in person. So we got lunch. We talked about our podcasts and both of our journeys in the health and wellness space. And here we are. It led to this.
Here
So
we are.
super excited to dig in with you, Marv. So just to start, let's dig in a little bit about your podcast. So your podcast is Uncle Marv's Unhealthy Podcast.
Yes.
I want to know what led you to start this podcast and even just your journey to finding what health or the unhealth means for you.
So, just to give a little bit of background, so I spent most of my life being active, thinking I was healthy because I was an athlete. So, of course, as an athlete, you're healthy. I was a state champion in a couple of things, competed in college, thought I was in the peak of health, and continued playing, sports until, my 40s. And one day I decided, you know what? I cannot be covering a kid half my age on the basketball court. And I said, I'm done.
That's fair.
And to me, when I'm done, I'm done. So it was something where no more running, no more gym, no more working out of any sorts. And I thought that I would just stay my perfect, lovely shape. And that did not happen.
Mm.
So a few years into that, I said, you know what? I got to do something, but I wasn't going back to the gym. I said, what can I do to be healthy in a normal, regular way? And then I realized I wasn't going to be able to do it just by myself. My wife had worked for a weight loss center, and I wasn't going to do any of those programs because I heard the horror stories. And so I said, well, let me start asking people because people were posting they had done and what worked for them. So I had started asking friends, and I said, well, I can turn that into a podcast. I was already doing other podcasts for my tech business and stuff. So I said, yeah, I'll turn this into a podcast. And I went a year doing version A of this and scrapped it because it wasn't working.
Oh, no.
So I rebranded and I came up with the Unhealthy Podcast name because I thought, you know what, that's going to get people, at least their mind will trigger a little bit. And then we'll just talk about, what are the things that we're doing in life that we can just change one simple habit here or there, and it will make all the difference in the world.
100%. And that right there is why I knew that you would be an amazing fit for this podcast because yeah, that's what we try to do here. It's finding the small sustainable things that we can maintain over time, and that's the journey that you're on. And yeah, so we get your perspective trying to figure it out as we go along, and then I am on the other side of it, and we can talk about the many different options,
Yeah.
which you've already found a lot of them on your own. So yeah, through your podcast, you have just started weeding through a bunch of those things, which
Yeah.
I want to get into a little bit more.
All right.
But the Unhealthy Podcast, I love that name so much. It really does like kind of catch your attention, and it's very it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So in some of your episodes, you talk about different apps that you've used. That you've tried along your journey, a lot of them relating to food. So I want to talk a little bit about the apps that you have used, maybe some of the pros, some of the cons, and if you still use any, if you like them. So if you want, you share a little bit about the ones that you've tried so far.
Sure. So, of course, I did what most people do. I went to Google and asked, what apps are available out there. But I did this after I had spoken with somebody on the original podcast, and she had a program that she's like, well, I'll let you do this for free if you'll give me feedback and stuff. And it was an app specific to that program where I'm going to say this in the kindest way possible, um, forced you to do that social media thing that most people hate, where it's take a picture of your food and send it to me.
Mm,
And I'm
gotcha.
like, what? No, I'm not doing that. Um, and I wasn't going to track calories. I wasn't going to, read labels to figure out, how much protein or how much calories or how much. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm too old for this. And so that led me to look for other apps that I could use for food that would just tell me what is good food. I'm like, how
Mm.
hard can that be? Well, turns out it's actually pretty hard. So I actually had started out with an app, I believe it was called Foodukate. And
Interesting. I've never heard of that one.
yeah, and it was an app that was based on some national program or whatever. And it claimed that, it would tell you which foods were healthiest. But the problem is to get all the good information, you had to pay.
Mm,
And I said, you know what? That's another thing. Being healthy shouldn't be something that I have to pay for. And that was one of the motivators for the podcast too, is I'm like, I shouldn't have to pay a fortune to do all this stuff. So there was that app. There was a couple of others, but the one that I ended up landing on that, at least for now, I like the most is called Yuka or Yucca,
mm,
Yuka. And the only reason that I like it is because I can scan barcodes at the store for free, and it will give me a very simple color coded red, orange, or red, yellow, green if a food's good, bad, or eh. And so that's what I went with. And it does all the stuff where it tells you, you know, what are the additives, what are the calories, the sugar. It gives you the positives in terms of, saturated fat, sodium, um, all of those things that we know when we go to the store. We know we're supposed to stay away from certain foods, but the app makes it easy. So that's kind of where I've settled on with the food apps.
that's amazing. And I've actually heard a couple of my friends talk about that app, and I'm pretty sure, you correct me if I'm wrong, it might also, I think it's for clean products in general. So like skincare, maybe some other things. It might kind of extend into that too, but it sounds like it's very user friendly. And if you can use the barcode while you're grocery shopping, like that right there is a bonus.
Yeah, it does do a whole bunch of stuff, but I right now I'm just sticking to food. But the
Okay.
two big categories are food and beauty.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. That's very cool. And how long have you been using that app?
Probably about 6 months.
Okay. And you stuck with it?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's easy. You just,
Yeah.
scan the food and it tells you, and it keeps your history. So you can kind of go back and see, okay, I scanned Dr. Pepper a while ago, and that's an orange one. It's not as bad as Coca-Cola, which is, very, very red.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you might have convinced me that I need to whip out that app and just check out some of the foods. Can you scan the barcodes of foods that are even just at your house?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
cool. So I think that's a good
anything
place
with
to
the
start.
barcode, and I should have said most things with a barcode because there are some things that it can't do. It can't do like honeys and sauces and stuff like that.
Okay.
But all of your packaged food, anything with a store barcode, it should be able to read.
Yeah. Interesting. So do you find that you are shopping differently now that you use that app?
Uh, so the short answer is my wife is shopping differently.
I love it.
Because we actually just put it on her phone so that she could use it, because what she would do is she'd be at the store, send me a picture and say, how does this scan?
Oh my
I'm like, I
gosh.
can't scan it.
Very
Yeah.
inefficient, so we're more efficient
But
now.
it does change how you shop. And here's how I think it changes the most. A lot of times we go to so if you go to Whole Foods or
Mhm.
Sprouts or, one of the places that is supposed to be healthy, a lot of those foods still aren't healthy.
Mhm.
So you have to know what you're looking for. It doesn't really matter because Publix and Winn-Dixie, in a lot of ways, are the same as Whole Foods and Sprouts. But you just
Right.
have to find those foods that are healthy in a sense where, they're either truly organic, not fake organic,
Yep.
that they disclose the chemicals and all of that. And of course, the ones that don't, this app will tell you, oh, by the way, this has got some fat in it that, it doesn't say on the label.
Interesting. I bet the food companies don't love that app very much,
No, I doubt it. But here's the
but
thing.
it's good for the
I
rest of us.
think most of the population doesn't really care either, which is why,
Mm,
healthy stores still serve bad food,
totally. Yeah, that's a very good point.
which
Yeah,
is odd because,
and
you know, people go after McDonald's where McDonald's never touted itself as being healthy,
right.
but
Yeah.
we'll go after.
They knew what they were and they owned it.
Right. Well, but then they, caved in because people said, "Well, you need to have some salads."
But who's really going to McDonald's and ordering a salad, you know?
Nah, not me.
So, in your podcast, I've noticed that, especially as of lately, you've been addressing more of like the mindset portions of different aspects of your life, or life in general. So, how has your mindset around health and fitness changed kind of throughout this process and throughout this journey of you trying to find what works for you?
So, I'll be honest, for me, I don't know that it's changed a whole lot except how it's talked about
Mhm.
because what I'm finding is there are a lot of people that simply need to get their mind right before they can
Mhm.
make any headway, whether they're doing a fitness program, whether they're trying to adjust their diet. Uh, Having a healthy mindset really helps focus what's really important. From the first question of why exactly are you doing this? Because if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you may not end up with the results that you really want or that you really need. So,
Definitely.
talking to people more about mindset has really opened up the door of, putting everything in its proper place. And a lot of
Mm.
times, mindset just has to do with how a person sees something like food, something like their own body image, or how people treat them, or how they treat people. Uh, Having the mindset that is truly healthy to start really will guide everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So how I guess when you decided to make a change, when you decided that you wanted to, stop guarding a kid half your age or in his, teenage while you're playing basketball, how did your mindset, what was your mindset, I guess, when you decided to make that switch?
Well, when I stopped, the mindset was, "I don't care." I
Mm,
mean, whatever happens, happens. I've worked enough in my life that I don't need to worry about it. But then, of course, I'm still, out in public seeing clients. I'm at
mhm,
conferences, and you get those little comments here and there where, "Oh, getting a little belly there,"
mm,
and so I'm like, "All right, I need to lose the belly." And for a while, I kind of let that stuff get to me, even though most of the time it doesn't. And it wasn't anything that I had to do, like, it wasn't that I was feeling bad, except for waking up in the morning with, more aches and pains, but I accept that. I'm not afraid of that. But it was more of, okay, now that I've started to address that, it was more about not necessarily worrying about the belly,
mhm,
is am I doing what I can do normally on a regular basis
yeah,
to be healthy in that regard.
right,
And hopefully, if I'm doing that stuff, then the belly would take care of itself.
yeah,
So that was a big thing for me. And it's, again, mindset was a part of it where I had to really think about, okay, am I really worried about what these people say about me and my belly? There are other people with bigger bellies than me.
mhm,
But it was part of that image that people were either used to or either I was portraying that wasn't matching up. And I said, well, I've obviously got to fix that. And I let people know that talk about my belly all you want. I'm healthy.
Right, exactly. You're making the changes that are good because what is happening on the inside doesn't always directly correlate to what's happening on the outside.
Right.
Um, a lot, sometimes. And first, I'm so sorry that people thought that it was okay to make comments about your body. I think that's something that we've talked about on this show before. Is especially as personal trainers, I've talked about with one of my friends that our bodies are not our business cards, but for anyone, no one should feel comfortable commenting on someone else's body in any type of way. So and I know it did kind of lead to you making a change, not that necessarily, but yeah, that's kind of a tough thing.
It was a
Yeah.
weird thing. I mean, it's part of it has to do with our culture now. We live in a culture where social media, people can say things from a
Mhm.
distance.
Yeah.
It's much easy if, somebody sees me in a picture on stage. Oh, look, it's putting on a few pounds, Mark. They would never say that to me in person.
Right. Absolutely. People like to hide behind the keyboards. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, and so you mentioned a little bit about what you do for work. So I know you work in tech.
Yeah.
How do you balance your day job, like what you do for work, and balancing your wellness and what you're trying to do for yourself?
Well, it is probably more difficult in what I do. I mean, as a tech, most techs sit around all day. It's
Mhm.
not something where you get up and you're active. Now, I can be active if I'm helping a client, move office spaces and I'm lugging computers around all day. But again, I'm getting older. I hire younger people for that stuff. But again, it's more about what can I do healthy throughout the course of a day in terms of how I eat. Maybe it's something where I do make sure I get up, once an hour and walk around the office, or I make sure I get out for the day. A lot of stuff too is just balancing what I do off hours, in terms of not staying up late and, not sitting in front of the TV, chowing out, stuff like that. So it's a whole mixture of things. So it's not necessarily, I don't want to say balance. It's more of just what's the daily routine, you
Mm,
know, uh, drinking more water and less soda. I mean, that's not really something you have to balance. You just do it.
it's very true. When did you make that change?
So that change is not completely done.
Okay, that's okay.
But we started that change probably a year ago,
Okay.
and it started with just simply reducing all of the other stuff. So uh, there is now water coolers in the office, and we buy uh, water that passes the Yucca test. So
Okay.
we
Oh,
buy that.
lovely. I love that.
Yeah. And I restrict myself to maybe I'll do one soda, maybe two a week, as opposed to three, four a day that it
Mhm.
was before. So it's just, making the adjustments. And eventually there will be a time that there's no soda in the house or office.
Yeah. And how have you noticed that you feel differently because of that change that you're starting to make?
Well, it's a big difference. So, along with changing out the water, drinking more teas and not just, you know, iced tea type stuff. It's more of the organic brewed teas, um, the mushroom coffees and stuff. So, yes, it has made a difference. And just simply cutting out, all those unnecessary caffeine and sugar
Yeah.
made a big difference.
That's fantastic. I love that. And I like that you say it's not fully transitioned yet, but it's always a journey and there's always some progress that you can make in something. So even once you're fully done switching over from, soda to water, you have something else that you're going to want to keep working on, which
Yep.
is great because it gives us something to work towards, right?
Yep.
So I wanted to ask what kind of insights have you maybe gained from embracing like the imperfections of finding what works for you along the journey? So like the things that didn't work, like what have you learned from like the trial and error process?
Well, I learned that one of the things that I think people always refer to is the stuff that they hated
Mhm.
in trying to make themselves right. And people have this situation where one of the reasons that they fail is because they were either forced down a path, by somebody telling them what to do or some program, that they had to adhere to, and it was all about restrictions and stuff like that. And I think one of the first things that I tried to do, somebody had sent me one of these, and I mean, I thank her for doing it, but she sent like a whole box of these keto packets.
Oh
And
my gosh.
the first one I did, it was just one dumped into coffee, and I'm like, "Oh, I could do this." And then the second one I did was one that you poured into, a bottle or glass of water and turned it into one of those drinks. It was the nastiest, nastiest drink I ever had.
Oh no.
And and I said, "Okay, maybe it was just that one." And I tried a couple more, and they were just all, ugh, ridiculous. And so the thing for me was, yeah, what works for other people is not gonna work for me. And going through this journey with others on the podcast, basically giving people permission to not like something.
Mm,
And I think it was just a matter of we went through the periods of, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, where it was just people, you were told you have to do this if you want to make that change. And that's just not true.
right.
And there are things that work for some that don't work for others. And you've just got to find what works for you. And you've got to find what
Absolutely.
you're comfortable with, and hopefully something that you like doing.
Right. And something that'll stick and that you can use, for the foreseeable future
Yeah.
too. And so kind of along that, have you, from everything that you've investigated, everything that you've trial and errored, what habits have you found that have stuck and which ones are like an absolutely heck no, I'm not doing that?
Well, I think the biggest one is just being able to take the app, like we talked about, and just
Mhm.
scan the foods.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's necessarily a habit, but it is a reinforcement of I'm doing what is best for my body by
Yeah.
doing this. So that's one thing that was big. And of course, I can't go shop every week with my wife. And so, having her have the app was a benefit there. But just simply making the right choice, um, putting in the cans of water, in the office so that I didn't have to worry about the choice, getting rid of all the other stuff. Um, the other habits have really come across as things that you do in life that are just part of your routine. Going to bed earlier. You know, most of us have a routine, even if we don't think it's a routine. We watch the certain, number of shows. We'll do a certain thing before going to bed. We'll eat something before going to bed. I mean, we have those routines. Um, and it's all about breaking that habit. And maybe you just break one habit a week or a month. So that's really
Yeah.
what it is. I mean, I'm trying to think, in terms of what specific, but it's all little things here and there.
Yeah. So with the app that you use, I'm curious how you approach, like if you go somewhere, like if you go to a restaurant or if you go to a celebration or something, what do you do about food when you come to a place where you can't scan or see what's in those foods?
So I have to go back to what's in memory.
Mhm.
But the second part of that is I don't worry about it.
That's
I mean, I
awesome.
can't, I go to conferences all the time, and I can't really worry about hotel food because I just assume it's going to be bad. So I just seek out what's the lesser of all the evils. And I may go to what's green if I can identify it. And if not, I'll just have a smaller portion of the other stuff.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I think that's a good way to kind of approach it because there are a lot of people who travel for work and I know that, options options at hotels or when you're out, even just at restaurants are not not always the greatest, and also when it comes to portion sizes too,
Yeah.
just being aware, and it sounds like you after using this for, 6 months, you have the awareness around what foods are, quote unquote good or which ones are going to make you feel better. You know which ones make you feel better, which ones make you feel worse, and you can adjust from there. But also it sounds like you'll still have foods that you enjoy when they're around and if it's for a celebration or something like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, the idea is that life isn't perfect,
Totally.
and, one bad meal isn't going to, kick 10 pounds on me. So, I can't
Exactly.
worry
Yeah.
about it. Um, Now the other thing that goes along with that is if you can travel with foods, whether
Mhm.
it's a, snack that's healthier than, the burger you might stop and get, do that. We don't eat out as much. That's a big thing. My wife loves to go out to dinner, and we were able to stop that because the amount of time and effort that goes into going out to dinner, you just turn that into cooking dinner at home. And to be honest, it's probably about the same amount of time, um,
Yeah.
but a lot more beneficial. Because we weren't going
Right.
out for the social aspect. It wasn't like we were going out to hang out with, three other couples, which a lot of people do, and a lot of people may like that, but that wasn't us. So we
Yeah.
adjusted, what we did to match that. Um, when I when I am able to drive to a hotel, I know that they've got to look at me funny because I've got a cooler full of food and drinks. I bring my own
Really?
water. Yeah,
Okay, I have to ask, did you bring your own food when I saw you in Orlando?
absolutely.
You
Yes,
did? That's
that's why you did.
amazing. What did
That's why you
you
didn't
what did
see
you
me in
pack?
breakfast.
That's a fair point. I didn't see it. Well, I was also eating my protein oatmeal in my own room, so
Okay, so yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I'd have my banana and fruit with me in the mornings. I would pre-make sandwiches, so some turkey sandwiches and stuff, and of course my waters.
that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. That's so funny. Wow, I guess I didn't even realize that. I wonder how many other people, like, think about that, like, how many other people at this conference that we were at, brought their own food. Um, and I mean, yeah, it's just a really interesting topic. So
What? I should probably ask that because a friend of mine in Liquidy that goes, she has to have gluten-free food.
oh,
And I remember Sunday morning, I actually met her at one of those restaurants there. Now, for her, it's easy because she had been to that place and she knows what's gluten-free and
okay.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if she brings her own food everywhere. I should ask her.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. Hmm. Now, I know you also said that you were doing, when you were playing all these sports until you kind of stopped, you were really active. So, is there anything right now that you're working towards as far as finding movement that feels good for you? You've got the food part
No,
taken care of. No,
no,
that's okay.
no. My wife wants me to walk every night,
Yeah,
but that happens every now and then. But no, again, it was one of those things where I said, I'm just gonna do what fits within my
yeah,
boundaries. Um, I'm fairly active when it comes to walking. I mean, I do. Some of my clients are in office buildings where I may decide to take the stairs instead of ride the elevator if it's 2 or 3 floors. So I mean, I make those types of adjustments, but I don't want to make that daily workout adjustment.
totally. Yeah, I get that. And honestly, the food part that you're figuring out is the harder part for a lot of people. So you're getting the hard part out of the way now, Marv,
Yeah,
which is awesome. Oh,
I, f- I figure by the time I hit the nursing home, I'll probably do the puppy yoga stuff then.
stop. Oh, if they bring okay, so you have to go listen to you have to go listen to Marv's episode that I recorded on his. We talked about puppy yoga. You have to go listen to it so that you can be in on the joke. But man, if you're at a nursing home and they bring puppy yoga in, that would be the best nursing home I've ever seen. Oh man. Okay, so something that I kind of like to end with at the end of my show is it's called absolution. So I like to give my guests the opportunity to tell me something that they think because the fitness industry can be sometimes toxic, right? I mean, you're weeding through all of that right now. You're kind of working through that. So I'm curious what you think is something toxic in the fitness industry that that you would absolve or do away with.
Uh, well, of course, the man gyms are just something where I don't know if I should have said it that way, but that's but you get the idea where when you go to certain gyms and those that mentality of, you've got to weight train this way,
Mhm.
you've got to, grunt and throw the weights around,
Yeah.
you've got to do CrossFit and, get hard, brother, stuff like that. I'm like, you know what, uh, when I was 20, I got that, but no, at a certain age, you kind of let that stuff go.
Yeah.
Kind of what So so here's my thing. So we don't do costume parties.
Okay.
So my wife would love to, but my philosophy is, once you get past the age of trick or treating, there's no reason for an adult to wear a costume. I had an earring, in my 20s and 30s, and I picked an age of 40. I said, you know what? When you get 40, there's really no reason for a man to have an earring in his ear. So I go through all those periods where, you know what? I'm old enough that I don't need to be that way in the gym.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of the stuff I would do away with it. But the way I would probably phrase it better would be something like, listen, you be you,
Yeah.
you do you. And if that works for you, that's fine. And let me be me.
Yeah.
I'm going to find out what works for me. And if it coincides with what works for you, great. If not, just allow me the space to do what works for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think if I had to maybe put the man gym into words, I would see that as like ego lifting, you know? I don't know if
Okay.
that makes sense, but yeah, that's definitely something where and again, like you said, everybody's reasoning for doing something is different. If they feel good, more power to you, but it's not for everybody. So that's why Planet Fitness is it Planet Fitness? Is that why they have like that lunk alarm or whatever, the one that you hit when people are like grunting and throwing weights around?
I don't know, Planet Fitness, YouFit, Crunch, I don't know.
Yeah, they've all got a button for something.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So, I guess what's next on your journey to finding your fitness and finding your health?
Well, oddly enough, I do have a couple of shows coming up where we're gonna get back into the mindset of, what is it in terms of mindset that helps you formulate what healthy is?
Oh, I like
So,
that.
I've got somebody that's actually gonna turn the tables on me and, ask me those questions,
Ooh,
but, under a microscope, so that'll be interesting.
yeah.
And but then we're going to deal with some other shows. I just finished a two-part series on divorce,
Okay.
and I'm in the middle of a two-part series on turning trauma and grief into empowerment.
Wow.
And I mean, those are both kind of mindset oriented and relationship oriented. Um, so I think we're going to, venture down a lot of those different areas of, beyond health and fitness, what is it that we need to do in our lives to be healthy and to just simply live happy?
Yeah, and live a high quality of life. That's something that I always talk to my audience about here is just we just want to live a high quality of life as we age. And I think that those kinds of things, if you can get your, you know, your mentals around those things right, that, you know, even just mentally, you'll exceed far more than whatever's holding you back. So I think that's really cool. If you all want to listen to Marvin's podcast, it is Uncle Marv's Unhealthy Podcast. Love the name, easy to remember. So you guys can go check it out. You can go straight to his website, unhealthypodcast.com. And then, Marv, where can they find you on socials if they want to stay in touch?
So I am on, well, not all the socials, but I'm on LinkedIn. Just look up my name, Marvin B, and you can follow me there. I'm on Facebook, and there's actually an Uncle Marv page that you can find there. So just look up Uncle Marv, and I've got an Uncle Marv YouTube channel as well.
Amazing. And I'll put all of that down in the show notes so that you can make sure to check him out, follow along. Marvin, thanks so much for sharing your own journey. It's very unique, and I think it fits perfectly within the space of what this podcast talks about. So I so appreciate you opening up, sharing your story, and yeah, just thanks for
Well,
being here. I appreciate you.
thanks for having me. I hope your listeners enjoy.